Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into a really big idea in economics, one that came from a Nobel Prize winner, and it helps explain the fundamental rhythm of how economies grow.
All right, let's kick things off with a huge question, one that puzzles economists and world leaders all the time. Why can't an economy just keep growing super fast forever? What is it that eventually puts the brakes on?
Well, it turns out this Solow growth model, developed by the brilliant Robert Solow, gives us a really powerful and, honestly, a surprisingly simple framework for understanding why there are limits to growth. Okay, so at the very core of this model, you've got this constant tug-of-war between two big opposing forces. To really get what's going on, we've got to meet the key players.
First up is capital. You'll often see it as the letter K. Now, just think of this as all the physical stuff an economy uses to make other stuff. You know, the factories, the computers, the roads, the whole shebang. It's the engine of the economy.
So, how do we get more capital? Through investment. This is the force that builds the engine up, adding new equipment and infrastructure every year. A good way to picture it is like pouring water into a bucket.
And there's always a but, right? You've also got this other force working against it, depreciation. This is just the inevitable reality that things break down. Machines rust, computers get old, roads crack. It's the slow, constant leak out of that very same bucket.
So you see the battle here, right? On one side, you've got investment pushing everything forward, adding to our pile of tools and machines. And on the other side, you've got depreciation, pulling it back, wearing all that stuff down. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The way these two forces dance with each other over time, it actually explains something we see all the time in the real world, why countries that start out poor often grow way faster than countries that are already rich.
Just picture a brand new economy starting from scratch. It doesn't have a lot of machines, right? So the total wear and tear is super low. That leak in the bucket, it's just a tiny drip. Every new investment, like giving a village its very first tractor, has a massive impact. The result? Boom, rapid growth.
So in those early days, the net growth is just huge. You're pouring water in, and almost none of it is leaking out.
But here comes the catch. There's this crucial idea called diminishing returns. As you get more and more capital, two things start to happen. First, the leak gets bigger. I mean, more machines means more things are breaking down. Second, each new machine adds a little less punch than the one before it. A second tractor is great, but it's not a game changer like the first one was. This combo starts to slow things down.
And so, after years and years of this, that leak of depreciation gets so big that the incoming water from investment can barely keep up. The growth that used to be a flood has now slowed to just a trickle.
And eventually, this whole process brings the economy to a special place, a destination called the steady state. This is that balancing point where the water flowing into the bucket from all the new investment perfectly matches the water leaking out from depreciation.
So what does that even mean, to be in a steady state? Does all progress just stop?
Basically, yeah, in a way. The change in capital hits zero. Now, you're still investing, for sure, but every new machine you buy is just replacing an old one that broke down. Your total stock of tools and factories, your economic engine, it's not getting any bigger.
And that's the whole journey in a nutshell. It's a really predictable path. You start small, investment is way bigger than depreciation, so you grow like crazy. But as you get bigger, depreciation grows too, until bam, they balance out, and you hit that steady state where growth from just adding more capital comes to a halt.
Okay, so let's pull all this together. What are the big takeaways from the Solow model? What does it really teach us about how economies grow?
The main lesson here is incredibly important. Saving and investing, absolutely essential, especially for kickstarting growth. But they're not some magic wand for infinite growth. Because of those diminishing returns and the constant drag of depreciation, just piling on more shovels or more factories will eventually be canceled out by the cost of replacing the old ones. You just can't get richer forever by accumulating more of the same stuff. And that brings us to the biggest, most important question this whole model raises. If just building more stuff isn't the long-term answer, then what is? What's the real secret to lasting prosperity? Well, it turns out the answer isn't about having more capital, it's about getting better at using it. Growth that's driven by ideas, innovation, and technology. But that is a story for another time. Thanks for joining this explainer.
Welcome to The Explainer. So, have you ever wondered if we, as a country, are saving enough for the future? Or maybe, are we saving too much? Today, we're going to tackle one of the biggest questions in economics. How do we find that perfect balance between enjoying life today and investing for an even better tomorrow? And we're going to use a really powerful tool called the Solow growth model to get our answer.
You know, this is a question that every single country, every society has to grapple with. And it's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. A nation's choice here literally shapes the lives of everyone living today and everyone who will come after us.
So it really boils down to this classic trade-off. Do we live it up today, enjoying the fruits of our labor, or do we tighten our belts, save more, and invest so that the future can be way more prosperous? Now, saving more definitely fuels faster economic growth, but there's always a catch, right? It has to come at the expense of what we can enjoy right now. Okay, so how in the world do we find that sweet spot? Well, let's start by looking at what the real-world data tells us. And check this out. The pattern is pretty darn clear. You can see that countries that invest a bigger slice of their economic pie, think Japan, Singapore, they consistently end up with higher incomes per person over the long haul. So there's a really strong link here between investing for the future and how wealthy a nation becomes.
So, we know investing more is generally good. But what's the optimal amount? Not just high, but perfect. To figure that out, we've got to wrap our heads around a core concept from the Solow model, and it's called the steady state.
I love this analogy. Think of the steady state as an economy's cruising altitude. A country's savings rate, that's like the throttle. It determines how high that altitude is going to be. So the more a country saves and invests, the more capital its workers get, and the higher its long-run level of output will be.
But wait a minute, is higher always better? This is a super important twist. Just because we can push the economy to produce a massive amount of stuff doesn't mean that's what's best for our well-being. I mean, the whole point of an economy isn't just to be a giant production machine, it's to allow its people to consume. That's what a high standard of living is all about.
All right, so let's actually see what this looks like. To really get this, we're going to build the main graph of the Solow model together, piece by piece.
Okay, first piece of the puzzle. This curve is the economy's production function. Basically, it shows us how much stuff, or Y, we can make for any given amount of equipment, or K. Now see how the curve starts steep and then flattens out? That's the law of diminishing returns in action. You know, the first tractor on a farm is a total game changer. The 10th tractor? Not so much.
Next, let's add this straight line. What's this? Think of it as the economy's maintenance budget. All our capital, our machines, our buildings, they wear out over time. That's depreciation. And the more stuff you have, the more you have to spend just to keep it all from falling apart. This line shows us the investment we need just to break even.
And here's where it all clicks into place. The top curve is everything we produce. The bottom line is what we have to reinvest just for upkeep. So what's that gap between them? That's the good stuff. That's consumption. It's everything left over for society to actually enjoy. So our goal is to find the spot where that gap is as wide as it can possibly be.
This brings us right to the main event. We are on the hunt for that one specific point, the golden rule point, where consumption, our standard of living, is at its absolute maximum.
So just take a look at the graph. Just eyeball it for a second. Where does that vertical distance between the curvy line and the straight line look like it's the absolute biggest?
It happens right here. It's the precise spot where the slope of the production curve perfectly matches the slope of the depreciation line, where they're parallel. Now think about what that means. At this point, the extra output you get from adding one more machine is just enough to cover the cost of that new machine's wear and tear. This special level of capital has a name. It's the golden rule level.
And that's it. That is the answer we were looking for. The golden rule tells us the ideal savings rate to get the highest possible standard of living that can be sustained forever, not just for us, but for all the generations that come after us. It's the economic sweet spot.
So the condition for this sweet spot, in econ speak, is MPK equals delta. What on earth does that mean? Well, MPK is the marginal product of capital, just a fancy way of saying the extra output you get from one more machine. And delta is the depreciation rate. So the rule says you should keep investing right up until the point where the extra stuff your new machine makes exactly covers its own upkeep. Go one step beyond that, and you're actually making yourself poorer.
But this is all great in theory, right? What if a real country isn't at its golden rule level? Well, getting there can be pretty tricky, and it leads to some tough choices.
And this table just lays out the political challenge perfectly. Let's look at case 1. The economy has too much capital. It's saving too much. The solution is a politician's dream. Cut the savings rate, and everyone gets to consume more, immediately and forever. It's a total win-win. But now look at case 2, which is way more common. The economy has too little capital. To reach that better future, you have to increase the savings rate. And that means the generation alive today has to make a painful sacrifice. They have to consume less.
And that gets to this core idea. Reaching that perfect economic state often requires someone to pay a generational price, and that price is paid by the people who are alive right now. This really is the tough trade-off at the very heart of economic policy. To build that richer future, the people in the present have to consume less to free up the resources to invest more. They are, quite literally, paying it forward so that their children and grandchildren can have a better life.
So in the end, the golden rule gives us this really elegant, clear economic answer. It's a roadmap to the best possible future. But it also leaves us with an even deeper, more philosophical question, doesn't it? How much should one generation be willing to sacrifice for the prosperity of the next? What do we truly owe our future?